Well, hello. Ready for another cup of Snake Island coffee? This is becoming a pretty dang good blend, huh? Hey, so yesterday I was talking about restraining orders. And I got so excited that when I listened to it again, it almost made it look like I was saying that Michael Hawk had a restraining order against him. No. Michael Hawk does not have a restraining order against him. Michael and Ruth have a lifetime restraining order against Joseph Tetai. Yes, the poster boy for what we say stolen valor. Someone, in my honest opinion, is a major, like a primo psychopath. Think about it. This guy comes in, brings up a friendship that is based on a lie with Michael, and through that is providing security for Michael and his wife and the kids, his whole family, and through that is able to get audiences with people in TV at Discovery. Gets on Dual Survival. Didn't think he was going to get on Dual Survival. Ends up getting a show called Lone Operator, based on his security consulting business that he had in Nevada. It's interesting, if you type Joe Tetai or Joseph Tetai and security and terrorism in the state of Nevada, there's an interesting article written by a reporter about Joseph Tetai and his attempts to try and garner business. But anyway, so imagine how this works. Remember what I said about psychopaths being very charismatic? That's the thing about psychopaths. They're very, very charismatic, but it's how and why they do what they do. They don't appear charismatic. They don't see, because true charisma, like real deep charisma, by the people that you really enjoy being with, and you have a really good feeling around when you're around them, and you feel a deep connection. You feel like, that they're listening to you and you're getting what they're talking about. That's true, healthy charisma. But then there's the other type of charisma, which is of that dark manipulation, which is causing the charisma to come out to play on whatever they think they can get a hook into you and get you to sway you to their side for whatever their agenda is. Okay, from something as powerful as getting someone to invest in an operation, in a business, or something as insidious as Ted Bundy being charismatic and getting a woman to get into his vehicle, and look what happened to his victims. Yeah. So that's a psychopath, and that's how a psychopath works in using their charisma. And so Joe Tetai used his charisma, playing on all these little tags that he could try and get in with Michael. And Michael, straight up guy, Green Beret, honor, comes from that point of view and thinks that if you're a Green Beret too, then there's a brotherhood, there's a sense of honor. And I'm going to be talking about that in one of these episodes really soon. What is reality TV doing to the honor code in the special operations groups? What's it doing into the military? God, it's like, I hate getting conspiracies popping in my mind, but if you really want to destroy a society, you destroy the military that defends a society. And what better way to do it than from the inside out? Remember what I said? No country has ever been invaded and successfully conquered from the outside. It's always had its little moles, it's all little operatives, and uses them. And when it uses them, it truly uses them, not with the idea that, hey, you're one of us. And I'll give you an example of that. The thing that I used to hear all the time about Vietnam was like, oh, now Vietnam is unified. Really? So explain to me why, when the North Vietnamese came in and took over, I repeat, took over South Vietnam, and their allies, their brothers to the hammer and sickle, what happened to them? They were disarmed immediately. That's called trust, right? Yeah. So that's why when I think about people saying, oh yeah, it's like, it's a unification. And if I side with my nation's enemy, I'm actually helping my country. With a lot of people who have socialist agendas in our country and thinking that, oh, well, I'm really helping our country. When in reality, you're helping the enemies of the United States. You're helping the enemies of your own country, as evidenced in Venezuela with Chavez, as evidenced in Brazil with Josefe or Rosefe and Lula. Lula, how did Lula get into power? He got bankrolled by Fidel Castro and Raul Castro. See, because when the Castro brothers realized that they were getting their ass kicked by us in the 80s, they had to go to another strategy. And the other strategy is to get the FMLN in El Salvador. So imagine that. All my buddies who got killed, my buddies who got maimed, wounded, all of us who fought in that war, for what? So that it could be sold over and the FMLN comes into power? Yeah, interesting. Just because they found out that, hey, if you could get the citizens, this is an old saying, goes to I forget the name, Alexander, I think is his name, forget the last name, a Scottish political scientist who described how every democracy fails when the citizenry realizes they can vote themselves into the coffers of the government. Yeah, that's what we're in danger of right now. And it's been going on. It's not like, oh, wow, we're going to become socialist. We are socialist. We talked about this before. So, here's the situation. You've got Joe Tettide, who has a lifetime restraining order against him by Ruth and Michael Hawk. And he's not supposed to have guns. Well, he's running around and teaching firearms instruction. How does that happen? How is that allowed? Yeah, because you need guns in order to teach gun classes, right? Yeah. So, like I said, if you want a real restraining order, it's something that you wear on yourself and you train with. And that's the way you deal with people who really do need a restraining order, is when they cross the line and they show up at your house and they try to break in and cause bodily harm to you. So, that's my correction. I got so excited about talking about it because it's like all these psychopaths that Discovery just continues to freaking hire and reward. In my honest opinion, it's like, why is it that the only ones from Treasure Quest who ended up on other shows are the two guys who jumped me? That brings a very interesting question I'd like you to think about. I've thought about it quite a bit. Because remember what we talked about with scripting? So if a show is scripted, does that mean that everything, and I mean everything that happens on set was scripted? And considering it's reality TV and the way the game of reality TV is done is you use catalysts, because remember, there's no acting involved. You're actually going through this, which, think about it. What other business allows an employee to be harassed psychologically that could create post-traumatic response? Last time I heard about something like that was kind of like when they did like the Swedish trials in Stockholm. You remember like Stockholm Syndrome? What's that all about? And they did them in Stanford research. And it's like, whoa, we can't be doing that kind of stuff anymore. Where they took people and they put them in the role of prisoners, and then they took the others and they put them in the role of the guards, and then they just let things happen, and each one of them became really good at their role, and the psychological effects of that, where you've got guards who become like guards at the Hanoi Hilton and start beating up on people and causing major psychological duress. Well, imagine if that is the way producers and directors and showrunners are manipulating the actors. Because remember, if you're on a reality show, you are an actor. That's it. And you're a poorly paid one because you're likely not SAG, which I found very interesting, because Megan, she is a member of SAG. Why would somebody who's with SAG even deal with what was happening with us on a show that was being pushed as real, and yet it's totally scripted? But let's get back to the scripting, because let's think about things. Let's think about what happened during that week when Discovery threw Joseph Boyle, in my honest opinion, and basically because of a recording I have and a statement by a certain individual that Joe Boyle was always aware of everything and actually was directing fixes because it wasn't dramatic enough. So what can you do to fix this? And what can you do to fix that? Well, what if I came around the table and said, well, you know what we could do? We could get Jeremy, because Jeremy is well in their pocket. I mean, he has so much invested in Treasure Quest. He's got to make it succeed. I mean, he doesn't have really, in my honest opinion, he has nothing else. I mean, he's like, what, hiding out at a boat repair shop? A boat yard in Ecuador? And before that, Peru? I mean, when he found out about the TV show and he just busted his ass calling, out of all the people, I think he was the one who was doing the most calling to try and get on the show. And he found out about the show, as I state in my book, in my honest opinion, he basically was using Keith Plaskett on his shirt tails to run in and get on the show. Which is ironic, because the only one who was in season 3 was Jeremy. So again, my two tortfeasors, the two guys who jumped me, who are they? Brett Tudor, Mr. Stolen Valor, and Jeremy, the guy who smuggled the drugs with his brother and smuggled the artifacts that you saw on the show. The real artifacts. Not the other ones that were created by Sebastian Bale, our art director. Yeah. So let's say at the table back in Hollywood, back in LA, let's say, in my honest opinion, let's think about this. My honest opinion, what I think happened was they had their little powwow back there. And I said, we definitely got to jack it up, because we got to do better than first season. And we don't have the Vipers on Snake Island to make it really that much more dangerous and conflicting. So, what if they're just losing their minds out there in the jungle? Oh my God, how's that going to go? And then they go to Jeremy and they say, hey. And they go to Brett and they say, hey. And Jeremy's jumping at this because, remember, in my honest opinion, based on all the other stuff we've learned about Jeremy and his brother, harassing and cyber harassing, trying to intimidate me, trying to do two things. One is to defame me, but at the same time trying to intimidate me to get off the show, thinking, yeah, if we just scare him, he'll just leave the show. And then that'll open up the door for Jeremy, right? Ah, interesting. This is all conjecture. But there's a lot of stuff in there that when you look at him, you're thinking, wow. First, there's the event with Keith and his PTS, and it's popping up. And all this pushing of people, remember, because this is reality TV, and you've seen this, you've heard about this in all these other reality TV shows, where they're pushing people. And I see scripting, I'll give you another one, in my honest opinion, it's very accurate, and that is statements by Cody Lundin from Dual Survival. And the scene we're talking about, see, the way I look at it is, my scene being attacked by Jeremy is very similar in terms of being set up to what it was with my scene with the backpack on the rock and my scene in the waterfall. Remember that? Oh yeah, and it's like, what's it all about? It's basically about defamation, trying to defame. I mean, if you look at it, what happened to Cody? Cody was gone. And why was Cody gone? Before that, producer French, that's the guy's name, French, I forget what his first name is, but French. So the producer French on Dual Survival, they have a scene telling Cody, and he's laughing, remember? They're in Hawaii, And there's this conflict, the drama again, remember? It's the conflict between Joe Tetai, which is not too hard to do, I guess, based on my honest opinion, his psychological profile, and Cody, where they have Cody throwing these matches, unlit matches into the waterfall pond. And then you've got Joe Tetai yelling, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Building all that conflict. And I'm going, what is Cody doing? That just doesn't make sense. Why would you throw good matches in a pond? Why would you throw matches and be laughing like it's some kind of funny game? Unless the showrunner and the producer are trying to make you look like you're losing your mind. Ooh. Yeah. That's an interesting one. Because, Cody, he's, the long-haired hippie Indian, in the desert teaching survival, but he knows his stuff. Barefoot, he's a barefooter, but he knows his stuff. If I had to survive in the desert, I hate the desert, by the way. Yeah, some people love it. Me, no. I'll take the jungle way longer before I deal with the desert. And they've got him throwing these matches in the pond. And that's actually part of his defamation case. Remember, that's his defamation case against Discovery. Okay? Because they're trying to make him look like an idiot. Because when you make a character look more like an idiot, it explains why they disappeared off the show. And then they can put someone else that they think they can control. And that control is based on what the person thinks they're going to get out of the show. And what do you think happened? So then Matt Graham suddenly is on the show. And then you know how that ended up in Bolivia. And then there was no Joe Tetai, and then there was, E.J. Snyder, and they were just trying to recover Dual Survival, because that was a moneymaker. Oh yeah. Everybody loved Dual Survival, and they still play it. And now you can get on YouTube and watch the original show. Well, you can even watch the original shows where Joe Tetai is basically just totally losing it. I mean, you can see it if you're paying attention. Yeah, the Bolivia thing? Well, that's all set up. And that's the thing about it. So it's all set up. So it brings a question. Was my attack on Treasure Quest, Snake Island, was that totally scripted and I'm just the sucker that's going to be played upon by these guys? Think about that. I mean, a perfect example of that is the waterfall. You know how the waterfall scene happened? Well, we already know how the stupid backpack rolling into the water and being pulled out by Brett Tudor. Yeah, we saw how that all happened. That was totally set up. That's them saying, "Hey, can you do this?" And I'm taking it as a challenge. Yeah, I can make it look so real. And then it's like, wow, they're trying to make it look like, oh, he's just losing his mind. He's just not paying attention. Then you got the situation of waterfall. And man, if there's a defamation right there, that's all set up. Because, hey, we want to get another humorous moment, because that's the way they sell it to you. And you're a storyteller, so you say, I'm a storyteller. I mean, I write books. I report. So the story said, well, we want to add some humor to it. So how do you add the humor to it? Well, what we can do is we can have you go take a shower. And then they say, will you do it nude? Nah, I'm not going to do it nude. Well, will you do it in your underwear? Will you do it in your skivvies? Yeah, okay, I'll do it in my skivvies. So I go in the waterfall. It's freezing. It's coming down on me. I'm just in my skivvies. I just go, screaming like it's so cold. So, and this is how they play the game. They have you go and do one thing, and you think it's just going to be straight up on the board. It's just be there, and then it's going to flip to another story. But while they're doing that, they take one or two of the other actors, and they go and say, hey, so, I mean, what we'd like to do? What if you imagine you're seeing seeing Cork take a shower, and it's like really disturbing to you. So what would you say if it was like really disturbing to you? So then they have that and they record it, and then they just overlay it, and then they splice that in between me taking a shower. So, that's how that works. So, is that defamation? Because it's all by control. All by control. Remember, 100% scripted. They tell us what to do, what to say. Those are the secret business practices. So that brings up something really interesting. Because I was talking with a buddy of mine today. He says, I got to be really clear about it. That's why, have you noticed that when I say, in my honest opinion, I say that because if I didn't say that, there could be some real major legal problems. But I have the opportunity to tell you things by saying, well, it's my opinion. And everybody's got an opinion. So in law, according to Wiki, in law, fraud is deliberate deception to secure unfair or unlawful gain or to deprive a victim of a legal right. Isn't a First Amendment a legal right? Oh. Free speech and all that? I mean, that's what the media is always trying to defend. I'm kind of surprised they're not even freaking mentioning me and what the situation is. Why is that? Is media only concerned with the First Amendment when they're protecting their rights and opportunities to play the money game against your rights to be informed accurately on events? The purpose of fraud, continuing with the definition, may be monetary gain. Oh yeah, major monetary gain. What do we say? It's gotta be at least 50 million just off one season. We're not even talking about repeat and going over to Travel Channel like it's playing. Now it's on Travel Channel, Discovery Channel, or other benefits, such as here it goes into obtaining a passport or travel document, driver's license, or qualifying for a mortgage by way of false statements. And that's the thing about it. False statements. What's the difference between a false statement by a person and false statements, i.e. no disclaimers on a totally fabricated show? This is the thing about it. These shows are total fiction. As fiction as a really good novel or a really good movie that you would go and watch that has bona fide actors from Hollywood, trained thespians who have done their work, have been well trained, and are being hired, and it's a totally fabricated story. Even if it's a historical movie, it's, quote, an historical drama. That's fine, but that. You're being told it's a historical drama. You're being told it's a totally fabricated, it's a fiction novel. It's in the fiction section in the library, in the bookstore. And the movies that appear on Stars, like Outlander, love that show. Are there things in there that are accurate? Yeah. They talk about this, they talk about that. They didn't do the deer gutting scene accurately. That was pretty disgusting. Ugh. Like I said, don't gut a deer that way. But most of the clothing is accurate. The culture, the clan culture, the history between the English and the Scots, the history of the United States, how the Scots-Irish, my ancestors who came from Ulster to South Carolina in time for the Battle of Kings Mountain, Scots-Irish, all accurate. But it's told that it's a fictitious, it's a fictitious rendering of something, even though it's historical. Now, when you have a documentary, see, this is the thing, reality TV, documentary, people say, well, I never thought it was like reality TV is documentary. It is, because supposedly reality TV used to state that you are watching something that is happening and the camera crew is along just for the ride. That is nothing different from documentary. documentary is an event is happening and the reporters using video cameras, in the old days it was film cameras, recording what is happening. The way it's done, in my personal experience and my observations on Treasure Quest Snake Island, and from those I've learned and observed, like at Hunting Hitler, and stories that I've heard on American Jungle on History Channel. So remember, who's to be held responsible for this? And who's to be held responsible for two guys jumping me on a fully scripted show? Two guys who are the only guys still working for Discovery. Ooh. Conspiracies, collusions. In my honest opinion, I'd be asking these kinds of questions. I would love for you to ask these kinds of questions. You want to do your kids a favor? You want to do yourself a favor? Go over to Facebook. Go over to Twitter. Go over to Instagram. Every time you see a post on Treasure Quest Snake Island said, "Where's the treasure? How come Cork isn't on the show anymore? I thought he was the team leader. They didn't find all the treasure. And where is, quote, the treasure that was found?" These are true. As you remember the dialogue, the scripted dialogue, this is one of the most amazing finds of history. Think about it. Alessio Garcia, supposedly a myth. Okay? A guy who is a Portuguese fighting. He was on a ship for the Queen of Isabella of Spain. Okay? He's basically a mercenary. He's a soldier of fortune. He's a conquistador. Okay? And he finds this treasure. And he interacts with these cultures. And supposedly we found these artifacts that prove not only his existence, but his adventures and the results of those adventures. That's like saying, okay, well, there's this guy Columbus. And supposedly, he found the Americas. But then you find out, as it's being recorded on a reality TV show, that the artifacts are fake or they are stolen and not attributed to the actual find. And that everything on this show that is supposed to document the travels of Christopher Columbus are fictitious. Would that not make you think? Yeah. That's the big question about Alessio Garcia. That's the big question about Treasure Quest and the Treasure of the Trinity, or as the Brazilians like to say, Tesouro de Sombrio, the mysterious treasure. I mean, here's some interesting facts. We know that somebody was looking for the treasure of Alessio Garcia. We know that supposedly there was a Alessio Garcia, and because of him, people like Cabeça da Vaca, who was a very famous explorer, had actually found the falls of Iguazu by hearing of the stories of the adventures of Alessio Garcia that had happened earlier before his arrival. And when he founded, I think it was Asuncion. I think that was the city that he founded in Paraguay. Okay. And from there, he would do his adventuring, and he's the one noted as having found the falls of Iguazu, which, if you remember the mission with Robert De Niro and Jeremy Irons, I think it was Jeremy Irons, yeah, about the Jesuit priest and the Spanish mercenary. Were they Spanish? Yeah. And, no, he was a bandeirante. He was, yes, they were Portuguese, because the Spanish actually had stopped slavery of the Indians, of the Guarani. Okay? And you see that play in the movie The Mission. Well, the movie The Mission, by the way, was filmed exactly where we were. All that stuff with the drones and going over the falls. Yeah, that was the movie Mission was filmed right there. Yeah. Remember what I said about, like, I'm sad to say, there is nothing to find. There's something to exploit and explore further, but everything's been found above the ocean floor. and above the surface of the ocean. And we're doing pretty well on finding everything below the ocean surface. But thinking about all these things, I implore you, if you're on Facebook, go over to the Treasure Quest TV. Ask the questions. Type it up. Hey, and post up. Let them know about my YouTube channel. Get more people to find out what's really happening in the reality TV industry. Not just Discovery, not just History Channel. What other channels are creating these? Fake news, as I said, is a very, 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 very dangerous road to be walking down. Because if you're informing yourself, and you say, oh, well, you know, professors and politicians, they're not going to go and investigate this. Well, think about when something is put down as record and then it continues to change. I mean, we didn't realize until later that actually the Vikings is the latest confirmation of them having found the Americas before Columbus. Okay? But before it was always, oh, Columbus was the one who found it. Or the idea, is he an Italian? Or is he actually a Catalan? Because if you know the history of Spain, Columbus trying to hide his actual identity because he would have been executed by the Spanish because they were still at war. You know, it's like the unification of Germany and Prussia. It's like, well, the unification of what's the I forget the guerrillas up in the north of Spain. I keep on forgetting that culture, but they're Celts in northwestern Spain. I'll remember that. And the Catalan, you know, or the Scots and the English, you know, it was these unifications that created these, that then would become these kingdoms. Okay? So imagine where you've got fake news being delivered, and then it becomes actual record. And, you know, how can this be fixed? How can this be fixed? Michael and I have talked about it. It's about trust. It's about resetting and getting these networks back on what they say they're selling. Because remember what fraud is about? Fraud is about lying to your customer and saying one thing and actually doing another. So what if these networks would actually come clean and say, you know what? We truly have a problem and we need to fix it. But things don't happen. Remember, people are driven. Actually, most mammals are driven by pain and pleasure. We do things out of pain and pleasure. Avoidance of pain, going towards pleasure. That's why people make money, so that they can live in a house instead of a hole. Or staying out in the rain when it's cold. You have a house. So you build things, you do things to avoid pain. Okay? So, what is it that Discovery can do? What is it that History Channel can do? What is it that A&E, what is it that Discovery Communications can do to build the trust? Regain the trust of its viewers for all the shenanigans that they've committed as a result of going to the dark side in Hollywood. I'll bring that up next week. But for now, I'll leave you with suggestion to look down at the description of this video. You'll see a direct link to my book if you haven't picked it up. And maybe I'll throw in some other interesting links you might want to go and check out. And on that note, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. And we'll talk back on Monday. Have a good night.